Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Travel Show with your host, Ted Blank of Ted Blank Luxury Travel and Adventure. And we are actually very excited because we're talking to him on location, and I can't wait to hear about our topic today. Ted, how have you been? You're traveling.
I am. I feel like the guy from the Muppets. Remember Guy Smiley, the on-the-spot reporter?
Yes.
I feel like that. So I'm on the spot in Anchorage, Alaska right now.
Oh, I love it. So what does today look like in Anchorage, Alaska?
Well, it's actually a gorgeous day. It's probably about 62, 63 degrees. Very sunny. The flowers are blooming. That's always the first surprise when you get to Alaska. How many flowers there are. Short growing season, but 24 hours of daylight gives you beautiful flowers. So beautiful day in Anchorage.
Yeah, I guess I never thought about the 24 hours a day of growing. So it's the land of the midnight sun still right now?
It will be, yes, it will be. So the sun pretty much won't set. I mean, it'll get a little bit dusky, but not dark, no dark nights.
Wow. So Alaska, I know, is one of your favorite places to go, and it really is becoming super, super popular. Tell us more.
It is, and it's funny because this is actually the first time I've ever flown into Anchorage. Usually I've either flown into Fairbanks or I've flown into Vancouver and gone the other way. So this is my first time flying into Anchorage, and even the flight in is just spectacular. You fly over the Chugach Mountains, you fly over some of the glaciers that you'd actually see from your cruise ship, and so it's just this white mountain range that stretches forever, covered with snow, and then you land in Anchorage, and it's actually quite green here. They actually, grow crops here in the summer. It's got the climate for that, but short growing season, as I mentioned.
So, Ted, you actually flew from Minneapolis directly to Anchorage?
That's correct. There are about 5 or 6 flights a day in the summer to Anchorage. And if you're going on an Alaska cruise that starts like in Denali National Park, you can choose. You can fly into Fairbanks or you can fly into Anchorage. And either way, you can head up to Denali National Park, spend a few days there, and then you double back through Anchorage, hop on the ship, and head south. I am not going to go to Denali this time, just a cruise. 7-night cruise southbound to Vancouver that leaves tomorrow morning.
Well, that is awesome. Have you done something like this before?
I have, and this is kind of the most popular of the Alaskan itineraries. It's the one-way cruise between Vancouver and Anchorage, and so probably 70-75% of the people who come to Alaska will take this itinerary or a variation of it.
So you hop on your cruise ship in one of those cities, and this is something that you could help us put together.
Absolutely. We do it all day, every day. It seems like we work with Alaska a lot. And so, I kind of joke that I have 2 requirements for my team when they first start in their first year. And one of them is that they have to go to Alaska on a cruise. So I'm happy to report we had 100% compliance in everybody's first year. So everybody on my team has been to Alaska. And they've also been on a river cruise to Europe. So those are kind of the important bases that I want to make sure that, they're as expert as I am in this destination.
Ted, why is Alaska so popular?
That is a really good question. And I think part of it is that it's a very mysterious place.
Sure.
It's about as exotic as you can get in the United States without really leaving the country. Alaska and Hawaii are kind of those 2 outposts of America that are separated from the rest of the country. Glaciers are, I think, probably the number one draw that brings people to Alaska, the opportunity to see those beautiful glaciers as you cruise by them in Glacier Bay National Park or Hubbard Glacier or one of the other glacier cruising areas. The wildlife up here, the wildlife viewing is incredible. I can't see anything right now other than someone walking their dog, but there are whales out in the inlet here that I'm looking over. And so probably if I sat here for long enough, I might have a chance to see them. And certainly on the cruise, we'll see some whales and eagles and other sea life, sea otters and seals and maybe even a bear or 2.
Oh, my goodness.
It's a little early for the salmon to be spawning right now. They usually start doing that in kind of mid-August. So it's a little early to see that. And if you head up into Denali National Park, you can also see the sheep, that we would kind of describe as mountain goats. They call them doll sheep. And moose and bears as well. So that's another big draw for Alaska. And then there's, very interesting culture and heritage here. The frontiersmen that came, the natives that were here before, the Native Alaskans who are still here. So it's kind of got something for everyone. And it never gets too hot here. So you can wear your bathing suit along if you want to cruise. But, you can leave your shorts at home. It's kind of jackets and slacks weather here most days.
So tell us about this specific cruise that you're on, please.
Yeah, so I'm going to be cruising with Regent Seven Seas Cruises. And they are a cruise line that you and I have talked about before. They're a luxury, all-inclusive cruise line. And so in Alaska, one of the things that means is that every passenger has a choice of multiple shore excursions that they can choose from. And so, you could, for example, choose to take the Scenic train in Skagway. You could choose to go for a hike. You could choose to go on a culinary tour. Lots of choices in each port, and those are all included in the cost of the cruise. And so we'll be visiting Hubbard Glacier, which is one of the most scenic signature glaciers in Alaska. Usually if you see a photograph of a cruise ship in front of a glacier, that will be Hubbard Glacier. And then we're also going to Skagway, Sitka, Juneau, and Ketchikan. So we have 4 different ports that we'll visit before the cruise ends in Vancouver a week from tomorrow.
So each day you will be in a new place, or no, will you have a whole day of cruising one of the days?
No, each day will be in a new place, and the distances between these aren't very long. But again, the nice thing here is that the sun kind of never sets, so when the ship leaves, you can enjoy some really beautiful scenic cruising through the Inside Passage. And that's one of the highlights of Alaska, just the scenery, really, just to sit there on the deck of the ship and take it in, because we don't have anything like this back home in Minnesota or Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. The mountains here are a little higher, and the scenery is really, really quite spectacular. It's a nice pace. There's something different to do every day, but also time to just relax and enjoy the ship. And each port is different. Sitka was the Russian capital of Alaska when the Russians controlled the territory here. Skagway is kind of the gateway to the Yukon Territory, where they have the Klondike Gold Rush. And so there's a scenic train that runs from the port all the way up the mountains. And you might hear a plane flying over. A lot of Alaska doesn't have roads. And so instead of having cars, people have planes. And so there are actually more people who are pilots in Alaska than any other state in the United States. And a lot of them are float planes. So we're kind of right by the float plane base here in Anchorage. But getting back to the ports, Ketchikan is a fishing village. They also have a really cool lumberjack show that I think is neat, where they do the log rolling and all that stuff. But then I always have to kind of burst people's bubbles when we talk about it a little bit, because guess where a lot of the log rollers come from?
Minnesota, right?
Well, Cable, Wisconsin.
Cable, Wisconsin.
Cable, Wisconsin. So they come up here in the summer and go back there in the winter. But Cable is like the home of the log rolling championships and all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to visit Juneau, the capital of Alaska, which will be the biggest city we'll visit. It's only about 45,000 people. And Juneau is not connected to the outside world by roads. So the only way to get there is on a plane or on a ship. And Juneau has a nice glacier called Mendenhall Glacier that you can actually walk up to the foot of the glacier and kind of see it from a very close perspective. But it's also got an interesting downtown that has, shops and restaurants and things like that. And then there's a cable car that you can take up to the top of one of the mountains there to get a really, really neat scenic view over the harbor or the bay that Juneau is located in. So each port is very, very different. So each day is a different experience.
And you've said this before, that you can't really describe how beautiful Alaska is. The pictures don't do it justice.
Pictures don't do it justice. It is absolutely beautiful.
It's breathtaking.
It really is. It really is. And even if you look at, a video that gives you a little more perspective, even on a really, really big screen TV, it's nothing like being here in real life.
Well, that is so awesome. So who are you with on this trip? Have you met people that this is their first Alaskan cruise, or maybe their second or third?
I have. Yep, we don't actually board the ship until tomorrow. But, there are people who are here in Anchorage for the first time. There were some on the airplane that were coming up here to take their first cruise, and they were super excited by that. And then there were some old Alaska hands as well.
Tell us more about the Regent Seven Seas ship.
Yeah, so the ship is actually called the Seven Seas Explorer, and it's about 4 years old. It actually came out just about the time COVID hit, so it spent its first 2 years kind of waiting for passengers to board. Mm-hmm. But it carries about 800 passengers. All the staterooms on it are either suites or mini suites. So you have a nice, spacious balcony to enjoy regardless of the level of accommodation you choose. One of my favorite amenities on board is that they have complimentary valet laundry.
Oh.
And so every day you can put your dirty clothes in a bag and they'll bring them back to you the next day folded and pressed and wrapped in tissue, which never happens to me at home.
No.
I never get my laundry. I don't know if that happens at your house, but I never get my
It does,
laundry.
but I don't use tissue.
Oh, there you go. I don't use tissue. Yeah.
Wow.
But they have a couple different restaurants on board, and again, everything is included because it's, an all-inclusive luxury cruise. They have an excellent, excellent Asian restaurant that I'm really looking forward to enjoying again. They also have a French restaurant, a steakhouse. They have an Italian restaurant that's sort of like an outdoor al fresco restaurant, and they bring Alaska on board. They'll have a lot of Alaskan-themed, ingredients and dishes that you can enjoy during the cruise as well. And like all cruise ships, it has entertainment. It has a very small casino, has a pool. They also have speakers on board who will give lectures about the nature of Alaska, the natural history, the geology, glaciers, the life cycles of glaciers. So you can really learn a lot on this cruise as well.
It sure sounds like it. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. And I think folks have maybe been on a Caribbean cruise, and that's a very different endeavor because that's much more about just enjoying the good weather and sitting back and relaxing, whereas this is definitely, more of a learning journey.
As far as this sun that's not setting, what does that do to your sleep schedule?
Well, it's a 3-hour time change to Anchorage, and, the good news is that the hotels and the ships have pretty thick curtains, but it does kind of mess with your biological clock a little bit. And if you're in Alaska for, a week or longer, it takes a little longer to get adjusted here to the time zone, I would say, even than maybe going to Europe because of that 24 hours of daylight.
So our body naturally does crave the sun setting, and that makes us tired, do you think?
I think our body naturally craves the sunset and darkness. But, of course, you could come here in January and the sun would never rise. It's dark almost 24 hours a day.
Very interesting. So as you're going in and out of some of these towns that you mentioned, do they rely primarily on tourism? Because the season isn't 12 months long, the tourist season. So what's that like?
You're correct. And actually a lot of people will go up to Alaska for the summer to work in the tourism industry, and then they'll leave in the winter. So Skagway, for example, in the summer the population is about 4,000, and in the winter it's about 40. So
wow.
A lot of places just kind of shut down. There are other industries here too, fishing, oil, exploration certainly is a big industry, but it is a very, very seasonal destination.
Well, Ted, it really sounds like it's a great cruise, and this is just one of many. And you mentioned the timing of these. This is a 10-day cruise or a week-long?
This is only going to be a 7-day cruise,
Okay.
But they range from 7 days up to actually 10 days, 11 days, 2 weeks of cruises, and then you can also extend the trip with a land program either in Denali National Park elsewhere, and you could even catch a train through the Canadian Rockies. You could even catch a train from Vancouver before or after your cruise here to Alaska. So lots of options to go for a week or go for longer if you have time. It's interesting because when I first came to Alaska, it was probably about 10 years ago, and this is probably my 12th or 13th trip to Alaska. I kind of lost count. But the first time I came, I was really unprepared for how much it affected me. I mean, the natural beauty is just amazing. The sense of being kind of alone in the wilderness is very interesting. Even when you're, in a small town surrounded by other people, you very much do feel like you're in a wilderness, way, way away from civilization. And the towns are small. You realize just the logistics of everything, getting sunglasses to the gift shop and the logistics of getting them there is pretty incredible. And things we take for granted every day back home are very, very challenging in Alaska. So you have to be sort of a kind of a resilient person here in Alaska. And as I came here the first time, and you just kind of start to see that, and you kind of start to sense it, and you sort of internalize it a little bit. It really is a place that every time I come back to, I find something new or different that I haven't seen before. And common questions that folks will ask me are, what are the must-sees in each destination, and there are absolutely some greatest hits in each destination. But part of the fun is having some time to explore a little bit on your own and kind of find a little bit of a hidden gem. For example, in Skagway, Scenic Train is a top tourist attraction in the world, but there's also a little gin distillery nestled around the corner behind their tiny little grocery store that has some of the best gin I've ever had. And so Alaska is kind of hidden gem. And you can come back again and again and not feel like you missed something or run out of things to do. You never will. There's always something new and interesting to see or do.
Well, Ted, how can we please book our trip to Alaska?
Yeah, so believe it or not, 2026 is filling up and 2027 is already available to book.
Oh, wow.
But you can give my office a call at 651-964-8245 or visit us online at tedblanktravel.com, and we're happy to chat with you about Alaska. Or if you happen to be up in Hudson, Wisconsin, we're at 206 Locust Street. So just give us a call, make an appointment, and we're happy to chat with you about Alaska or anywhere else you want.
Well, safe travels to you. We wish you a wonderful trip on this Alaskan Regent Seven Seas Explorer ship, and we can't wait to see you when you get home. Thank you so much. Ted Blank, of course, is the host of the travel show on AM 1460 and FM 97.7 KDWA in Hastings. This travel show has been brought to you by Ted Blank, Luxury Travel and Adventures.